Hello everyone, this is Addicron Podfic, back with another podfic. Um, so I filmed this chapter, or these two chapters, last week, and I thought I uploaded them, but apparently there was an error, it didn't upload, and I only realized that on Wednesday, because I was like, wait, I don't think I got any notifications about, any comments on that video. And then I checked, and it never uploaded. And by that point, I had already deleted the video in order to make space on my phone. Because I go through and after I post the videos, I delete them because I'm doing this all on my phone. I don't have that kind of space to be keeping every single video I've filmed. Yeah, so I have to refilm this whole video. Great feeling, I know. Yeah. I will be getting. Actually, no, let's do the usual monologue thing at the end. Anyway, this is Frayed Feathers by Fiction for Life _NZ. This will be chapters 25 and 26. And that's all for now. Chapter 25. There you are. Ithaca's shores were on the horizon, and they grew closer by the day. Last time Odysseus had been this close, there were nearly 600 men with him, and now it was just their captain left, guided on by their godly kin, with another bag full of storm that would never be opened. His heart, normally heavy from the guilt of all he had done and the pain of those he had lost, felt lighter than ever. It was the same excitement he'd felt upon leaving Troy, the thrum of power when he'd used the Molly against Circe, the surge of joy when Hermes had found him again. He felt alive. Penelope and Telemachus were so close. He was almost home. Even the arrival of yet another beast had not dampened his returning spirit. If anything, it had improved it. They had been alerted to the monster's arrival by the faint hum of divine presence in the air as they sailed on. The steady rumbling and wailing as it drew closer had reminded Odysseus of whale song. But the thing that arrived had been far from a majestic creature. Charybdis. That was what Hermes had called it. Their feathers fluffed in agitation while he'd lashed down the supplies even tighter, a giant, almost leech-like creature with mouth sporting rings of teeth and an insatiable appetite. Evading Charybdis had been as exhilarating as it was terrifying, and Odysseus found that he came out of the encounter feeling good. It felt like his mind was coming back together again, like pottery shards being glued back together. He'd worked out their tactics, found how to beat them at their own game, like a whirlpool with teeth that had drawn in water and anything else unfortunate enough to get caught in the flow. That was how it fed. And that was how he survived. With such a small boat and the blessing of his great-grandfather, evading the open mouth below the surface of the waves had been easy. He'd run literal circles around the monster, forcing them to take in more and more seawater to try and catch the prey that always danced just out of reach. His wings had helped him find the air currents he needed, and he'd been able to tilt the sail to catch every one of them as he skimmed across the streaming water. The eruption that had followed when it had finally given up had sent his boat nearly an entire day closer to Ithaca, and it had stopped pursuing after that. He didn't even have to kill it. It nearly did that by itself by refusing to throw up all everything that had been sucked in. "Darling, that was absolutely brilliant! You are brilliant!" Hermes had praised, doing laps around the now slightly damaged boat. "Look at you, sharp as ever and just as daring!" The whole time they'd flown about the scene, pointing out the best places to cross past the rows of teeth and warning him where the flow was strongest. Never once had they intervened, or felt the need to, which was nice. It meant they still saw him as capable, even after everything he had been through. They alighted down next to him as he'd adjusted the sail and inspected his hands for rope burn. Moving the boat around Charybdis had required a lot of pulling on the rigging, but there were only a few light abrasions across his palms with that the god quickly healed up. After that, it was more of the same. Waves rocking the boat as the wind carried them closer. The only difference now was that the island was in sight, and they no longer needed the North Star to guide them. Keeping on course was easier, so Odysseus could afford to not be as attentive, providing they stayed moving in the same direction. But spare time to relax after another challenge meant Hermes had a larger excuse to fuss over him. He loved and appreciated his great-grandfather. Truly he did, but he was not the biggest fan of being coddled so frequently. And he would never tell them to stop, because he wasn't about to deny them their joy of being able to take care of their kin. Good thing he thought of another way to avoid it, or at the very least postpone it. So he sat still when Hermes leaned over with that same damn silk cloth they always used, lulled into a false sense of security because he didn't voice any protest like usual. and just as they were about to begin, he struck, closing his hand firmly around their waist and pulling them closer. The sound they let out was somewhere between a squeak and a yelp, with their feathers fluffed up in shock as he quickly maneuvered them to sit in front of him, because Hermes was a god, and gods weren't used to being moved around or treated in such a way. "Darling, what?" "It's your turn," he laughed, batting his own wings against theirs to show he meant no harm. He pried the fabric from them with one hand, using the other to hold them in place as he pressed it against their speckled feathers. Working around their hat was difficult, but he managed. Turns out the squirming was yet another inherited trait from them. "How many times did you tease me about this?" he demanded with a chuckle, running the cloth in between the two feathered appendages on the right ear. "Not nearly enough to be tortured like this!" They laughed back, fighting far less than he'd expected them to. "I must admit, it's been a very long time since I've had anybody else clean my wings." "Well then, it's a good thing you've taught me so well," he fired back, grinning as they settled into a more comfortable position so that he could reach their larger ones. When Hermes would care for Odysseus's wings, they took their time. Showered their great-grandson in attention and care. When he took care of his own wings, he was quick and efficient. He gave the god wings the same treatment, knowing they wouldn't be able to sit still for very long like he had to. "Tell me about my family," he requested, as he sorted through the feathers on their larger wings. "You've been to see them. Tell me what waits for me back home." "I don't want to spoil things for you, darling," they responded, quieter now that they had finally relaxed. "But your wife still waits for you. She's never once been swayed for another, just as you were never swayed from loving her. As I have already told you, there are men living inside your home who should not be. They trample over your name and demand your place, so you'll have to take it back." 108 men, he recalled. Surely enough for two tricksters to handle. "Your son has grown well in your absence, even if he has been kicked around a fair bit. But he has a strong will, just like you. Even after years of having to deal with them, he still holds his head proudly and refuses to engage in their antics. Well, most of the time." "I'll make them bleed," he promised, more to himself than Hermes. "They won't escape. They will pay for their behavior in their own blood." "And I, for one, will be delighted to watch such an event unfold." The god giggled, shaking out their now preened wings and standing up to stretch. "Thank you for that, darling. Now!" He let out an equally embarrassing yelp of his own as they darted over and scooped him up from where he sat, flipping him around and settling him with his back against their chest, a new silk cloth already against his ear wings. "Time for me to do what I was going to do earlier. You're not escaping that easily." Odysseus sighed. It was worth a shot. If he had been on a bigger boat, he would have started pacing by now. They were less than a day away from Ithaca's shores, and all the scheming in the world could not make him feel prepared for what was to come. His wife and son were so close, but 108 men still stood in his way. He could handle them, would handle them, but what came after made his stomach do flips. He wasn't the same, not any more. He just hoped they would still be willing to love him. "Darling, your wings are going to be a state if you keep this up," Hermes warned. "I know you're anxious, but please try to calm down." He couldn't help it. With no room to pace, his wings had settled on moving as much as they possibly could to make up for it, alternating between fluffing up and flapping like some love-struck bird, which, if Hermes had anything to say about it, was an accurate description for his great-grandson returning home. "I'm almost there," he sighed, leaning against the mast. "Yes, you are, and things will be fine, I promise. Relax, dear." Following their advice, he settled himself down with his back against the side and his wings splayed out to catch the warm sun. He liked how it made them practically glow, perfectly clean from all the times Hermes had fussed over him. From here he could see the outlines of the buildings in his kingdom, the trees and the rocky hills and cliffs where gulls wheeled and dived. Home. He'd reached it. "I'll take over the steering, darling," Hermes offered, taking the rope from his hands. He hadn't even realized he was still holding it. "You just rest. It's almost over." The boat lurched, and he hissed in pain as the back of his head smacked against the boat's side. It lurched again, and his wings flapped in an effort to keep him standing as it continued to repeat the motion, as if striking a wave. But there was no wave for it to hit. The water was still. Too still. "Darling?" Hermes said, his wings puffed in agitation. "Darling, get down now!" The next movement sent him crashing into the mast, tearing a gasp out of him as it bruised his shoulder. He slid down against it, bracing as the boat began to move again, but not towards Ithaca. He peered over the side, horror settling into his bones as he watched the seawater flow backwards. It was dragging them back out, away from Ithaca, away from his family. "No!" he screamed, raw and desperate. He was so close, he was right there. Something smacked his cloak and dragged him back. And it was only once he was tucked under his great-grandfather's wings that he realized he'd nearly fallen off in his panic, nearly plunged himself into the water that was stopping him from reaching home. "I don't have time to do a blessing. Shit!" Hermes cursed as he tried to force the sail into catching the wind again, but it was not strong enough to beat the current. "Dear, I need you to stay calm, all right? I don't have time to hide you. Odysseus, you need to breathe. If you pass out now, things will be much worse." Things were already at their worst. There was only one reason the sea would be behaving in such a way, and that was if the water was being controlled by the one who ruled over it. What a fool he'd been, to think he'd managed to escape, to think his past misdeeds would have been forgotten. 10 years was but a small divot in the immortal lifespan of a god. Odysseus may have fled the sea's wrath for over 7 years, but they had an eternity to catch up with them. He did his best to keep his lungs full, using the feeling of Hermes' feathers to ground him. He wasn't alone. They wouldn't abandon him or leave him to fend for himself against another god. But what could they do against someone far more powerful than them? What could lies do against the vengeful sea? The sky was growing dark, full of clouds, but with no storm in sight. There couldn't be a storm. It was trapped in the bag. That did nothing when faced with his approaching demise. The water stopped when they had been drawn far enough out that he could no longer see the individual trees or the birds on the cliffs. Close enough to see his home, held so plainly out of reach, but far enough away that those on the island would not see what happened to them. "I'll keep you safe," Hermes muttered into his hair as the boat spun idly amongst the swirling waves. "I won't let him take you. You will get home." He found he couldn't believe their promises, even if they clearly did. He sucked another breath, hating how it made his lungs burn as he fought against the urges to beat his wings like a downed bird and scream at the unfairness of it all. The overwhelming smell of brine flooded the air as a ginormous figure clawed their way out of the water. Just as they had over 7 years ago when they first met face to face, the tremors that ran through the water carried up through the hull of the boat and rattled his bones, and he could feel all of his feathers bristling. He wouldn't be able to flatten them any time soon, and judging by the rapid beat of Hermes' heart, they weren't faring much better. They stood strong as their uncle rose out of the depths from which he had lurked, but Odysseus could feel the faintest shudder running through their wings, made more obvious by the fact that he was hunched underneath them. He removed himself from the safety of their hold, noticing how the tremor became far less apparent as a result. His great-grandfather threw him a terrified grimace, ear-wings pinned, but he just tilted his chin and nodded at them that he would be all right standing behind the god. He wouldn't, and they both knew that. One silver-tongued liar could not deceive the literal god of lies, but Hermes needed to tread this carefully. Odysseus had seen firsthand that what Poseidon was willing to do to make him suffer, and he would not let Hermes fall victim to their cruelty as well. Cold, malice-filled eyes stared down at him, a mouth of sharp teeth grinning as they used the waves to nudge the boat even closer towards their waiting claws. The predator had found its runaway prey. "There you are, coward!" Now, Chapter 26. Get in the water. "Uncle!" Hermes called, spreading his arms out in a welcoming gesture. "I haven't seen you in some time. How have you been?" Odysseus recognized that voice he was using. The over-enthusiastic showmanship and politeness was something he had once been achingly familiar with. Now he wasn't. Sure, he could scrape together one of his old masks in the face of the god who had caused so much death. "Hermes," Poseidon greeted curtly, still not looking away from where Odysseus stood. The sea god's eyes were still filled with malice, but there was now also a flicker of confusion and interest. Their icy blue gaze roamed over the former captain, lingering for an uncomfortably long time on each set of wings that had come to press tightly against his body. Maybe he should have let Hermes bless his new headband. This was the one god who had never known about his wings upon first introduction, and also the one who was most likely to do something to them. He knew that if they got their hands on him, they could easily be crushed or ripped off. They may have grown stronger over the years, but a god's strength far surpassed that of immortals. Following the sea god's line of sight, Hermes opened his own and stepped between them. Odysseus felt no shame when he tucked himself behind the flared appendages so that he was out of view. His mind was already conjuring up images of his own bloodied feathers held in the larger god's fists. "I see you've taken an interest in a lying, thieving Greek," they observed, voice laced with disdain. "And while I would say that you chose the perfect champion for your domain, you'll have to find yourself a new one." "He's actually my great-grandson. Poor thing's been away from home for a long time and made a lot of mistakes in that time as well, but he's paid for them, so I'm bringing him home." Hermes was trying to downplay his care. Back in the underworld, he'd said if it was possible he'd trick the sea to never find him, and Poseidon did not need to know that. He was dangerous enough already, and Odysseus was reminded painfully about how thin the boards of wood were between his feet and the water. Oh, he's far from having paid the price for his ignorance. You say he's your great-grandson? Last time I had him cowering before me, I didn't see any wings, Poseidon pointed out. And now you claim him to be your kin because he has suddenly grown feathers. You know how that sounds coming from the god of lies. Yes, well, he was never prone to showing them off until I found him, Hermes explained, own wings fluttering out as if to show the similarities. He didn't want to offend the gods since he didn't know about— He offended me, my son, and my domain without those wings. This changes nothing for me. Step aside, nephew, and let me deal with him as I have waited to, they ordered. Once this is over, you may do what you wish with his soul. I prefer if he stayed alive, actually. It's not every day I can find someone with feathers like mine. Just find another one. This whelp has a spawn of his own. Wouldn't be too hard to give them wings as well. That's really not the same. This is not a negotiation, Hermes. Step aside. Uncle, I really can't let you hurt him, Hermes said, voice taking on a more pleading tone. He's one of mine, and I need him to make it home alive. Surely you can let him go. You are a god, Poseidon roared, suddenly and sharply. The life of a mortal, divine-blooded or not, should be beneath you. The waves surged up and then crashed back down around the boat in which they stood, their master loathing the idea that a divine could devote so much attention to an individual like him. Odysseus bit his tongue, and he could see Hermes showing similar restraint. After all, if the life of a mortal was beneath the gods, then what other reason was Poseidon here if not to end this? Let him face me, or I will not give him a chance to speak and drown everything he cares about, the Lord of the Sea snarled, and the other god was forced to relent. They slowly pulled their wings back, giving their great-grandson a chance to straighten up before the hateful glare was back on him. He could feel his own wings trembling, but Hermes stood close, and that was enough to hold the worst of his fears at bay. Poseidon had been putting up with their interference up until now, and they would not be swayed from their original goal by the rambles of one of Zeus's children. The Earthshaker was here for him, having waited for 7 years to torture him further before snuffing out his life. He could not postpone this encounter any longer. Odysseus of Ithaca, they snarled gleefully. I have waited for this moment, the perfect time to strike. They swept one clawed hand out towards the island behind him. He couldn't suppress the flinch as it passed over his head. He already felt cold, despite not having been struck with a single drop of water. Your home is in sight, and your coast awaits you, and this is where I planned for us to meet one final time. When we met, you were due to face your punishment for blinding my son and stealing from him. But now, after the little stunt you pulled to flee from me, you will face punishment for offending me and daring to think you were above a god. He never thought he was above us, uncle! A wave of seawater crashed over the side of the boat, drenching them both as Poseidon rounded on the smaller god for interrupting. Hold your tongue, Hermes, he hissed, or I will cut it out along with your mortals. It was Odysseus's own hand, grabbing them firmly by the shoulder, that stopped the messenger god from speaking up again. He would not let them be hurt for him. He would not let them be hurt because of him. This was his mess to resolve, and he would try. My reputation and name must be upheld. So I cannot let you live after your disrespect. If I do, the world will forget what it means to exist below the gods, what it means to defy me. The sea god leaned forward, close enough that he could count each individual tooth and fang that lie in their jaws. A true predator of the sea, both a monster and a god. Now get in the water, they ordered, almost casually. Get in the water. All of his feathers bristled at the tone. They spoke as if he were a disobedient stock animal that had escaped from its stall, and stock animals were often slaughtered, most commonly as sacrifices for the gods. Or I'll raise the tides until Ithaca is flooded, they threatened, voice still level. I will make sure that every man, woman, and child dies because of you. So get in the water, and they shall be spared. That was what he was to them, a sacrifice once more, to appease a god he had angered nearly a decade ago, a decade in which they had allowed all that hatred to fester and rot until it left them craving vengeance for the pain he had caused. Wait! Get in the water, Odysseus. Stop this, please! He begged, clutching his own cloak as his mind brought forth more horrific images of what could soon come. I'll make tidal waves so profound that even the palace will not survive. Your wife and son will drown. No! Not Penelope, not Telemachus. He'd fought so long to get home to them, endured so much for a chance to be with them again. This couldn't be where it ended. He would not let them die. Then get in the water, the god shouted, finally giving in to the anger at his hesitance to obey. Get in the water! Don't mistake my threat for bluff, little king, or I'll destroy your kingdom and all you have left to love. You have lived more than enough. Get in the water. One clawed hand smashed down on the end of the boat, crushing the wooden sides until they splintered and broke. The water lapped at the lower edge, close to spilling in and sinking the vessel. Those same hooked claws could very soon be digging into Odysseus's flesh, shredding his wings and ripping open his ribcage. If you do not do as you are told, I'll take your son from where he hides and gouge out his eyes. How would you die then, knowing that trying to resist your fate led to your own offspring being blinded just as mine was? They growled. If you choose to die, I'll leave him be. Do not make me repeat myself again. Get in the water. The waves seemed to echo their god's words as they rocked the boat. The power flooding the air was staggering, only combated slightly by Hermes' own from where he stood at his side. Not once had they spoken up, and he was glad that they had not. That they were listening to him. The Earthshaker wasn't just going to kill him. They were going to force him to kill himself. To step willingly into his own dark grave while they watched, forced to rot in the cold and empty expanse until he was reduced to nothing but what dwelled in the depths, never to return, or for others to learn of his fate. Forgotten. And for what? Something that should have been put aside far before now. This was not worth it. Waiting this long for revenge would never be worth it. Aren't you tired, Poseidon? He asked, voice cracking. It's been 10 years. How long will this go on for? We're both hurting, and I'm sorry for all I've done. Truly, I am. Why can we not leave this here and both return to our homes? The god leaned back until he was towering over the little boat, the clouds swirling above them like a dark halo. They had not expected him to speak, and especially not expected a sincere apology from a man who had spent years in a supposed paradise that they could not reach. But Poseidon was as unforgiving as the seas he'd rolled over, and he sneered down at the shaking king with salt-soaked feathers. I can't. Can't. That was the word they used in place of what it should have been. It should have been won't. This was no longer about his son, or his son's stolen sheep. This was not about the man that Odysseus had once been, or who he was now. This was about a god's ego having been wounded by a mortal who had wanted to live, who had only done what he did to escape, not to intentionally bring shame upon them. This was not a confrontation about pain and revenge. This was one of wounded pride from a divine being who was not used to experiencing such things. This was obsession, an untapered desire to see Ithaca's king completely broken by their hands before ultimately being forced to die in their domain. Maybe you could learn to forgive, he tried, a final attempt at peace. Open arms like Polites had always believed in. No. The water churned, sea foam spilling over the sides and hissing against the wood, and a particularly violent push sent him sprawling. He landed against the boat's side, crying out as his already bruised shoulder took another blow, before Hermes was able to pull him and hold him upright against their side. Their wings were puffed up, anticipating a fight, and curled forward to partially cover him. Odysseus could not see their eyes, but their wings told him everything they needed to know. With no time for blessing, no room left to lie, and no way to get the boat moving, they were trapped. No, he was trapped. Hermes could still fly, they could still escape without him, but they would never leave him behind, and his gut coiled with guilt over knowing they were going to suffer their uncle's wrath because of this. I told you years ago, you lying Greek, Poseidon roared, a stream of water twisting up and out until it formed into their trident. Ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. He stared, frozen in horror, as they raised the trident up. The prongs gleamed despite the absence of light, and he could see the blood, his blood, that would soon stain them. There was no more running, no more hiding, no more pleading or bargaining. This was it. Hermes wrapped their arms and wings more firmly around him, as if to somehow shield him from the blow. He tensed in their hold. This wasn't fair, not to him, not to his family, and not to Hermes either. They shouldn't have to suffer with him, because of him. Die! The trident came down. The wave surged in. The boat splintered into fragments. Hermes screamed as they were flung sideways, away from the weapon and his great-grandson. Hermes had pushed them off, shoved them away from the oncoming attack. He was a god and would have survived the blow. He was a god and didn't need protecting. He was a god who had promised to protect them. And his great-grandson had thrown him aside, away, so he wouldn't be hurt. taking the full brunt of the trident instead. Odysseus gulped a final lungful of air, tears already wetting his face, and gave his great-grandfather one final apologetic glance. They were terrified, desperately reaching out for him, trying to dredge up enough power to break through Poseidon's and rip him out from beneath the trident, but he was forced under before they could. And as he went beneath the surface, he saw their eyes, just for the briefest second. They were as bright as his had once been. And that was chapters 25 and 26 of I'll Be Home with Frayed Feathers. Hope you all enjoyed these chapters. Again, I am so sorry for, I'm so sorry for what happened last week. I filmed the entire video, posted it, thought I posted it, and then I went through my storage because I'd gotten a notification during the video that, while I was filming, so I was worried for, half the time that it was going to cut me off because I didn't have enough storage. So after I was done filming, I went through and I deleted, all the past videos that I still had that I didn't need anymore because, I'm not going to re-upload them. They're fine. I'm not going to re-upload any of them. At least I shouldn't need to. And if I do, I can just refilm the video. And then, a couple days goes by. I don't think anything of it. Because, I fell asleep pretty soon after that. I was like, okay, I didn't see any notifications. It's fine. It's whatever. But then a couple days go by. I never get a single notification for any comments. And normally I get at least one. Normally I get at least 1 or 2 notifications for comments because I have 2 people who show up to that I know show up to every video because they comment on every video. And I only really realized this on Wednesday because I was wait, I don't remember getting any comments from this video. And then I checked to see if it uploaded and to see if I had ever got any comments. And lo and behold, it didn't upload. It had never uploaded it, and I had already deleted the video off of my phone, days prior. So then I made that community post. I was like, I'm sorry for what happened. It didn't upload, and I had already deleted it. I went through, oh, fuck, earbud, damn it. Where, there, earbud. Ugh, okay. I went through, and I posted that, my first community post, and now here I am, refilming, uploading, and so I'm so sorry for that, I think that is the first week I have skipped since I started this channel, 8 months ago, and yeah, so that's basically all I have to say. Just, I'm sorry that it didn't get uploaded last week, and this week was actually supposed to be, my first Coral Palace. I'm starting Coral Palace. This was supposed to be the first week of Coral Palace. But this video didn't upload, so now I'm uploading this one, and so next week I will start the Coral Palace. And for those videos, they are, the chapters for the Coral Palace are longer. So I'll probably be filming them earlier in the day, and then posting earlier in the day, but they'll take longer to upload, so, it'll be I would imagine each chapter, because each chapter is probably, I would imagine, 5,000 words, at least, and also, yeah, so each chapter of that is, 5,000 words, so I'm probably only going to do one at a time, unless I can fit 2, then I will, but there most likely will only be one at a time. And so, almost certainly one at a time. Yeah. Testing season's finally over. I don't have any more tests, which is great. I finished state testing. What was it? I finished state testing last Friday. That was nice. I finally got that shit over with. Yeah, and then this is almost the end of Vengeance Saga. I think we have 1 or 2 more chapters for the Vengeance Saga for this. And then we're on to Ithaca. What else do I want to say? So, what else did I want to say? Yeah, okay. I think that's it. I hope you all enjoyed, as always. As always, I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all have a good night or day wherever you are. Recommendations are always welcome. I know I don't say this in a lot of my videos, but recommendations, suggestions, like even just general ones, like I've gotten a couple for Will Angst, I think I got one for Percy Angst, and then I also got the one recommending Coral Pot specifically. And I know I don't do, like, I know I don't post a lot of fanfic.net ones, but I am always willing to take recommendations or suggestions for fanfic.net fics. So I'm always willing to do that. Oh, dude, also, like, I would probably never do another JJK fic ever, but there's this one Percy Jackson Jujutsu Kaisen crossover fic I read very recently that like just finished and I just read all of it, and it is so good. Like, it is so good. The timeline is slightly confusing, but I can explain most of it, like, at least in the end. If I don't remember, like, it at the moment, I will remember it in the end. But if you guys want me to do that, I will happily do it. I already have several other fics planned, so this would be, like, way in the future. But I would be happy to do it because, like, it blew me away. It was so good. It's actually my first time I ever commented on an Ao3 fic because I loved it. Anyway, hope you have a good night or day wherever you are. Recommendations are always welcome. I think that's it. I really need to stop talking. I need to shut up. I'm sorry. Anyway, bye.